Welcome. Good afternoon, and thank you so much for joining us today for our Spring Lunch and Learn series. I'm Chris Cardwell, Program Manager for Deep Roots KC and the most recent addition to our team. I'm excited to be here with you all for the first time live in the virtual screen. But before I talk about today's topic and introduce our panel of speakers, I wanted to make a few announcements. First of all, we're incredibly grateful to the Johnson County Parks and Recreation District for their support of this broadcast. And we're also so grateful to our other sponsors, Missouri Department of Conservation and the Arvin L. Gottlieb Charitable Foundation, for making Lunch and Learn series possible. We're also grateful to you for your support of our programs and webinars. This webinar will be recorded and up on the Deep Roots website very soon. You'll all receive an email with that link and any resources mentioned during the broadcast. So watch your email and our website. And if you subscribe to our YouTube channel, you'll be notified each time we upload a new video. During the program, please put your questions in the Q&A tool on Zoom. I will use the chat feature to share links and other information shared by our speakers. Now, for the second year in a row, Johnson County Parks and Recreation Department has welcomed local artists to participate in their Art and Natural Resources residency. Now, humans have always used art as a lens through which to explore the natural landscape and observe the delicate balance of ecosystems, raising important dialogue about the roles of peoples within those systems. And the first known human expressions of art were interpretations of the natural world our prehistoric ancestors relied on for survival. And today, as the tallgrass prairie's survival is critically endangered, the collaborative artist duo of Cydney Ross and Alix Daniel hope to emphasize the importance of decades of JCPRD's prairie restoration efforts at the Kill Creek Park and others, engaging the community to reconnect with these precious local resources through an ephemeral art installation and public engagement event. Today, we join them and JCPRD team to dig into the crossroads where art and ecology meet. So I'm honored to introduce our speakers today. Susan Mong has served as the Superintendent of Culture for Johnson County Parks and Recreation since 2018, where she's led the creation of a brand new division of culture within JCPRD. Her work has been groundbreaking, integrating arts and cultural programs into the public spaces and communities of Johnson County, efforts that she says, quote, create better educational outcomes for our youth and creates a more engaged citizenry, more compassion. And we could always use more compassion when we enter into other people's stories. Cydney Ross and Alix Daniel should be no strangers to those of you who are familiar with Deep Roots programming. They've rightfully earned the monikers of KC's Native Plant Sweethearts. Alix is a native landscape specialist at the Anita Gorman Discovery Center, where Cydney also continues to serve. But in March, she joined Deep Roots KC as our outdoor education program manager and has quickly set to work expanding the reach and inclusivity of every organization and community that she serves. But I'd like to begin our panel discussion today with another very familiar face, that of Matt Garrett, JCPRD's Natural Resources Manager, who, among other things, oversees 8,700 acres of natural areas in eastern Kansas. Matt has been an invaluable contributor to numerous conservation organizations over the years, serving as an exemplary inspiration, a patient teacher, and a thought leader. So it's with great pleasure that I turn it over to our region's very own prairie czar himself, Matt Garrett. Welcome, Matt.
Thanks, Chris. The addition of public art has been a real breath of fresh air to our natural resource team here at JCPRD. We really work on like a cyclical calendar of resource work. We burn prairie, we plant prairie, we kill bad plants, and we repeat that cycle over and over and over again. And it's amazing, rewarding work, but integrating artists into our workflow has been a really neat opportunity to add some different perspectives and see things from ways that we just get stuck in the routine of doing this important work. And we do ambitious work, but working with artists has really slowed us down and put us in a place where we can kind of look small scale and large scale at the same time. And so it's been a really neat, interesting experience for us. we do good work, but we don't tell the story well, is something I've learned over the last few years. And art is an amazing medium to connect people to the environment, especially the prairie work that we've been doing in Johnson County since like 1997. And one of our biggest advocates is Susan Mong, and I'm going to be introducing her now. And she's been a huge supporter of our resource work and arts in Johnson County, and she's been integral to making the last 2 years of this natural resource art residency happen. And so I'd like to introduce Susan and have her kind of let people understand how the last 2 years of this process has worked.
Well, thank you so much, Matt. It's a pleasure to be with everybody. I want to thank Deep Roots for this opportunity to tell this story. And yeah, just look forward to a great conversation and learning from Cydney and Alix here in a few minutes as well. But I'm going to talk generally about the public art program, which is relatively new, but it's a commitment that JCPRD has made to really look for this great opportunity to marry these disciplines of ecology and art, as it's already been introduced. And so we're just going to tell our story and talk about some of the great things that have happened in the last couple of years. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. Okay. I think we're good here. So again, I wanted to just share that we launched the public art program through Johnson County Park and Recreation District in 2019. And I'm really thankful for the support of our leadership and the board that not only dedicated staff, but also some resources out of our annual CIP funding to be able to launch this. Well, that amounts to about $40,000 a year. And so that's huge. And so we were able to launch this. But before we got the program underway and kind of got into the business of looking at where to put public art, we wanted to slow down and go through a planning process and engage the community to find out what it is that they wanted to see out of our system. JCPRD is rather large. We serve the whole county. We have a little over 10,000 visitors a year across our 17 regional parks and all of our facilities. And so we wanted to do this intentionally and we wanted to do it well. So I'm just going to share a little bit about that. Let's to the next slide here. So there were some questions that we wanted to ask about this. And so the first question was really how public art at the scale of an entire park system, how we could leverage art to inspire joy and a commitment to care for these natural spaces. We know that when people love spaces and they love their parks, then they're going to be more committed to caring for them, but they have to understand what that means, right? And so that's really where this awesome collaboration with Matt, Garrett and his team sort of has grown and been born out of this program. We also wanted to understand how public art could support the mission and vision of JCPRD, as well as all of the important programs and initiatives that we have, including our natural resources plan. We wanted to showcase that. We wanted to showcase the history, the heritage, the cultural landscape, so people can connect to these spaces better and really feel again a greater sense of care and appreciation for what goes into making these spaces possible. We also wanted to understand how our public art program would both complement but also be distinctive from the other public art programs happening in the region. And we celebrate all of those other programs happening. This map reflects, the Kansas side, but there is, as you all know, so much more happening again on the Missouri side across the entire Kansas City region. So we wanted to figure out what space we could how we could contribute here and support the region overall and that rich public art ecosystem that we see. So we, step one, kind of started to engage the community. This happened during the pandemic, so we had to get creative in that time and space, and thinking about all of the stakeholders that might have thoughts on how public art could further all of these goals. So we did that very thoughtfully and used all of the virtual tools that we all have grown to depend on. And that was a really rich thing. And what we learned again was that people really did want to have a deeper connection to our spaces. They wanted them to be inclusive, interactive, and immersive. And there was really 3 pillars that grew out of that, all of that engagement. That was to celebrate place. We want to tell the stories that are unique to the ecology of our parks, of this region. We want to reflect the history and the culture of these landscapes, that placemaking, right, that we all enjoy when we go to a place and can learn and discover and be curious about what was there before us. We want to cultivate community. We want to draw both new and returning park visitors, building awareness and enthusiasm for the role JCPRD plays in land stewardship and placemaking. And that word enthusiasm is intentional because we want people to be excited and see themselves in this work. And then we want to support creativity. We want to invite artists, support that ecosystem. We want to make sure our public art program is something that the very experienced artists can engage in, but also emerging artists that want to get into this space and feel like there's a place for them to find opportunities. And so our master plan took us about 5 years forward, and it became clear that there was really 5 ways that we could manifest this plan. And that's through permanent pieces, pieces that are, again, with us for many years, temporary public art, so that opportunity to experiment and have something fresh and new for the public to look forward to. Artist residencies, which is what we're going to jump in and talk about today, workshops, and then exhibitions, spaces in our facilities where people can engage with these stories as well. And so we're really trying to walk out all of these 5 strategies with our public art program. So this is our first permanent piece that went in just last year. This is at Meadowbrook Park. Amy Jacobson is the artist, a local artist out of Independence. This is called Gateway. And so the goals of this really was, again, to reflect the natural ecosystem in Meadowbrook Park, and a sunflower is an obviously nod to Kansas. But one of the things we're really proud of in the way Amy envisioned this piece at Meadowbrook, which is viewable both during the day and at night, by the way, is the internal panel. And you can really just see it from a distance on this slide. But what you see reflected in there is the history of that site, the people groups, what that park was before JCPRD was able to develop that as a park. And so there is, again, pre-colonization, there is this amazing opportunity through the signage and QR code technology that we can have where someone can go and view this piece, they can walk through it, they can click the QR code and listen to Amy tell the story about the history of that site. And again, that connection to that place in a much more meaningful way. And then we also were able to complete our very first mural project. ITRA Icons was the artist team that we proudly worked with. This is actually a site, this is on a 4,000 square foot site of a sports building called Oaken Field House in Western Shawnee. To the left of this picture, you'll see a bunch of ball fields. And then to the right, just steps away from the site, is Mill Creek. Mill Creek Streamway park system, which many people bike and walk and enjoy. But, you know, looking at this mural, one might have said, gosh, why wouldn't you have a sports theme on this? You know, it's a building that has basketball and volleyball, and you've got the softball fields. But we really wanted, again, to be able to elicit a curiosity about the natural ecosystem, again, steps away from this site, really feature the flora, the fauna, the role of that streamway system in the health of our community, why that's important, why we need to care for it. And so the story of this project is really beautiful. And I will share that one of the things that's really important to us in all of our projects is the community engagement. And so Isaac and Rico did a beautiful job of creating sort of a community mural project alongside the big mural, where we had the public come in and put their feet in the streamway system and sit and listen and watch to see what thrived in that system. And then they came together and created this community mural project that is now traveling throughout our facilities as we speak, again, allowing people to discover, create a curiosity, and care for these important spaces. A temporary piece that we had in at the front entrance of Theater in the Park. This was Symbiosis by Matt DeHamers. Matt was also inspired by prairies, and so his vision for this temporary piece was an inverted tree. And it was meant to be this visual of this seedling and represent the complexity of the prairie and that beautiful what's below the surface, kind of that thought. And so Matt also did community engagement. They did a seed ball making activity in partnership with the Grassland Heritage Foundation, again, activating that art, using that as a tool to allow people to learn and just walk away with a different appreciation. And then we get to our very first Artist-in-Residence experience. And that was Kristen Taylor, who was embedded with our team to learn about invasive species and specifically bush honeysuckle. Matt Garrett just, and his team and our Shawnee Mission Park staff just welcomed her into our fold, allowed her to really embed with them to learn about this. And so this was focused on the Orange Trail at Shawnee Mission Park. And then Kristen responded artistically to this with a piece, an outdoor sculpture embedded in the Orange Trail. It was called A Seat at the Table. And it was made of reclaimed wood. And I'm going to advance here so you can see that. There is the piece. And so this was really to evoke this imagery of family and community. Our kitchen tables are really that place where we get nourishment, where we come together. And so she really envisioned that response to really talk about the natural resources team, what they've done to remove bush honeysuckle from the park. Hours and so many resources have gone towards this. The tiles that you see there was meant to tell the story of what plants have thrived here as a result of human decisions and which ones haven't. From before statehood, to the present, these were impressions of prairie plants that were slowly replaced by bush honeysuckle. So this really beautiful mapping of time really across these tables. So this was on display for about 3 months. And there was a companion exhibit that was installed at the Arts and Heritage Center. Because for us, accessibility is something that's always top of mind. Not everybody can, hike into this trail. So we did a virtual video of that experience of walking the trail and discovering this table. And then we also provided, again, a exhibit that was in a completely ADA accessible building, told the story, had tiles. So again, always having that top of mind. So that leads us to where we are today. And I will also mention this final slide, pardon me, before I introduce our next guest, that the community engagement piece in this case was a plein air group that came and painted this beautiful piece. These were all dyes that were made of plants and berries and materials that were from Shawnee Mission Park. So this really neat opportunity to engage the community again in another creative, artistic way and tell this story. So it is with such great pleasure that I introduce our next guests. They are our next Artist-in-Residency team. I am so proud to have Cydney Ross and Alix Daniel joining us for the second annual residency focused on prairie restoration. And at this time, I'm going to turn it over to them. I'll stop sharing and let them jump in.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Susan.
Thank you, Susan.
Hey, everyone.
Hello.
This is Alix.
This is Cydney.
And we are the Art and Natural Resource Residents with Johnson County Parks. And we are super excited to be here. We're going to share our screen here in just a moment. Susan, if you don't mind hitting end sharing at the top, then we'll pull up our slideshow. But we just want to say thank you so much to the team here at Johnson County Parks and Rec, because we would not have been able to approach this project on the scale that we've been able to do. So without further ado, let me pull up some visuals here so you can get a sense of what we've been up to. Okay, and if you have questions, please be sure to put them in the Q&A. We're also looking at the chat right now. So we will answer any questions at the end, but here's what we've got so far. Okay. So, wow, I don't even know where to begin. So we started this residency the first week of March.
Yes.
And it has been just nonstop fun, inspiration and excitement every single week leading up to today.
Should we do intros first though?
Okay.
You know us already,
Yes, that's a good
but
point.
maybe we should do a little bit of background
Okay.
just to talk about how we got into this residency.
That's a good idea. So do you want to start?
Yeah, I'll start. So I am the what is it, like Chris said, one of the native plant ladies at the Discovery Center. And my background is I grew up in in Kansas and all over Kansas in the prairies, playing in the prairies, going bird hunting and fossil hunting with my grandpa, gardening with my grandparents and my dad. And so all of my and then later on, I would say my arts background is more of a fiber arts background. My mom and grandma got me into sewing, and then from there I started to do embroidery, and I got to help with some really cool fiber arts projects in Kansas City when I was younger too. And so this whole project, well, you haven't seen what we're doing yet, but this whole project really, I know it really goes together for all of your skill sets too. But for me personally, it's literally everything. It's prairie, it's art, it's building these structures, just like at the Discovery Center. If y'all have been to the Discovery Center, we get paid to create these play sculptures at our nature play area for kids. And so our sculpture is very inspired by that. And
yeah,
so
you'll see lots of ties.
Love to do.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
And I think that's so cool. I've been kind of reminiscing on that too, just thinking about, our careers and where we've been, where they're heading. And so for me, well, so first we're both from, well, you're from Wichita, but I'm from Kansas City.
We
And
live in Kansas
we
City,
both live
yeah.
in Kansas City, right? And work out of the Discovery Center. But my background is fine arts. So I graduated from the Kansas City Art Institute with a degree in ceramics. And I have had a studio for 10 years at Belger Art Center, if you're familiar with that, up in the East Crossroads, the Belger Creighton Art Studios. And so the sculptures I make are typically inspired by architecture that's being built or collapsing. I'm trying to capture that passage of time that follows all things, whether they're cared for or forgotten. And so, but typically what that means for my ceramic work is I'll start with these intricate strips of clay, and then I do things with clay you're not supposed to. I overfire it, I freeze it, I manipulate it in a way so it starts to sway and collapse and have this element of spontaneity in the kiln. So it's kind of this fun thing where it's a little mad making too, but I think it's fun to like have this sense of control and then to be able to let go of control and just kind of see what the elements do to it. So I've been exploring these ideas on a much smaller scale in my personal studio practice and professional studio practice. But this residency has given us the opportunity to expand and work on such a large scale. So it's been exciting to go from working out of the gallery in the studio space, getting into the world of conservation through the Anita B. Gorman Discovery Center, and now being the outdoor education program manager for Deep Roots, and still being a practicing artist. So feel like we have the best jobs in the world.
We really do.
We have the best support. We have the best friends out there. And anyway, so
it's been a joy to work at Kill Creek too, because Kill Creek, we don't have any older pictures, but Kill Creek, we've been going here for years, and we have a history with this place, and it's a site that we always recommend people come, because our biggest specialty is talking to people about why native plants are so important, and telling the stories of native plants, and getting people to connect personally
Mhm.
with them. And so we've already been out here doing that for a while. And I send people out here all the time, even though it's a little bit of a drive from where
It's worth
and I should be
it.
sending people to Missouri
You know
Prairies,
what?
but they're closer here.
I gotta say, I would say it's really not that far. Everywhere in the greater Casey area, I swear, is like 20 to 40 minutes away anyway. So just take the extra 10 minutes. It's worth the visit, especially when the pale purple coneflowers are about to bloom. So let's walk you through a little bit of a timeline of our residency. We're gonna really speed through this, so get your questions ready. So we've met up with the natural resource staff at Johnson County Parks every week since the first week of March. We kicked off our residency helping with the prescribed burn with the team there. You can see Ryan and Emma and Renee, some of just a couple of the many staff members that were working with us. But the reason we burn prairies is because they have evolved for thousands of years to depend on fire to break dormancy, to kind of remove some of that built up layer of plants. And a lot of plants actually won't germinate unless their seeds are burned. It's kind of this cool evolutionary thing that's been in existence for thousands of years.
Yeah. And so we got so lucky to be able to assist with the burn on that was on the remnant section of Kill Creek, which is right by the observation deck. You can see in the background of that photo. And we so they're on about a 3-year burn cycle. I think Matt might know better, but so the section that we burned is the remnant area. And I don't think we've covered this yet, but that just means that it hasn't been plowed or used for ag in any other way. And so those species that are there are so special because they are still in that intact ecosystem.
Mhm.
And one of the most special plants there is the Mead's milkweed. And so the Mead's milkweed is a highly conservative species of milkweed. And Matt was telling us that the Mead's really thrives after a nice burn. So might see it popping up in new spots this year.
Yeah. So that kind of, I think, for our viewers here, I feel like a lot of you are aware of the benefits of land management, especially in this way with prescribed fires. But for a lot of the public who may not be aware, driving down the highway and seeing a bunch of fires can be a little alarming. So one of our goals is to educate the public on why this is important and necessary. And kind of thinking back to that remnant prairie that we helped burn, that's like taking a glimpse into history, right? Because these plants on that remnant have been there for thousands of years, like, definitely not in the same positions and things have changed, but still, like, that's how cool is that? It's been untouched. So it's really important to protect those areas, especially since there's what's the statistic again?
Maybe we shouldn't say untouched, because some of the problematic rhetoric around talking about places as if they haven't been managed before white people got here.
Yeah,
they have been managed by fire in these cycles by indigenous people for thousands of years to do that exact thing, get the duff off, to encourage grazing so that they can follow around their food sources.
Yeah.
And so untouched is a little,
That's true.
it's like
that's misnomer
because Matt and his crew and Monty and his crew do so much touching.
Yeah, they touch
go
the
out
prairie
and
all the
touch a lot of
time.
stuff out there, which is that all their hard work is paying off. It's just a gorgeous place.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the things we wanted to highlight with this. We're so thrilled to be able to highlight this really special prairie.
Yeah. And I'm kind of just clicking through slides as we go. There's a lot of images we've been documenting along the way. But so we've had that initial start with our residencies is mainly getting inspired, working with the staff members, learning about the history of the prairie, why this area is so important, why we need to protect it. And then we were so lucky to do tons of collaborating, not just between Alix and I, which has been an absolute joy, but with other amazing like ecologists and artists. So Courtney Masterson, Frank Norman, Ryan Rydell. We had Ginger Werp from Casey Wildlands out here. And it's just been such a wholesome experience, because I think one of the beautiful things about collaboration is getting to hear everyone's opinions. But then not just that, but seeing how it seeps in and transforms the piece. Mm-hmm. So even though Alix and I mostly have our hands on this, The Johnson County Park staff harvested hundreds of cedars and dogwoods for us to start this sculpture, which you can kind of see some of the sketches here that I made during the first few weeks of our residency. And there's Max, our 17-year-old cat, who's our muse.
He's our muse.
So we wouldn't have been able to approach this idea of having a serpentine structure built with alternating cedar posts and plant material snaking through the prairie without their assistance. And special thanks to Monty and his crew as well. So there's a few, besides just being inspired by our times on the prairie, we'd like to talk about a couple specific inspirations for us. One being this idea of restoring refuge, right? That's the title of the piece. But while we were out here exploring, we saw these dry stack stone walls, which were made by white people, you know, pulling the stones out of the prairies and in the areas so that they could farm. Which is kind of an interesting thing. Yeah, because by doing that, you know, I know we all have to, you know, make a living and do what we need to do to survive. And maybe unknowingly, they may not have realized that by removing these stones, they were displacing a lot of wildlife in the first place. And of course, like destroying prairies displace lots of life.
Yeah.
And so noticing these natural and built environments throughout Kill Creek Park was really the big inspiration for this project.
Yeah. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention Steve Irwin, the crocodile hunter, because that's how Cydney and I both I think really actually got. So I really wanted to be a herpetologist when I was younger. I've always had pet reptiles and been a big fan of reptiles and amphibians. And so, but I'm entirely too loud and not disruptive enough to go flipping rocks all day.
I know.
So that's why I hunt mushrooms and plants, because they don't run away and they're fine if I look at them.
You know, I love Steve Irwin, and we need to just have a whole talk about Steve Irwin.
But why I brought that up is that because we were inspired by the hibernaculums, which is the place that the rattlesnakes spend their winters.
Yeah.
And because with these rocks being stacked up, if you think about that, it displaced so many spots where all of these really endangered reptiles, lizards, turtles, all these little creatures lost that habitat when all those rocks were put together like that and no longer out in the landscape. And so I think Steve would be proud of us for creating some habitat for snakes. I just want to see one little snake.
We're too loud for snakes.
Yeah, we're way too loud. Don't worry, we've scared them all away.
Yeah, but so you can kind of see where we're going with this idea of and this feels like an homage to the prairie and an homage to the lives that existed in this landscape and the lives that have been lost and the lives that will continue to live on because of the wonderful land stewardship that we are all doing here as a community. So we have been set up at the Block Barn, which is such a cool space. If you all haven't visited, it's beautiful. It's part of the Kill Creek Streamway Trail system. And so they have graciously allowed us to use they call it lovingly the seed barn, because Casey Wildlands does their seed preparation out of that barn. And so we've been working with all the cedars that they've harvested for us. And that's kind of been our mainstay. But what's been kind of cool for this project too, we have also gotten to experiment with we have this community engagement project this weekend, which we hope you all will join us for. But we got to do a test run of this with the Charlotte Street Foundation a few weeks ago with their Earthworks program. So this is kind of what you can anticipate for the seed sculpture workshop on Saturday morning from 10 to noon, is sculpting prairie-inspired animals and plants using a combination of clay, soil, and native seeds that will then place into our sculpture. So you have the opportunity to collaborate with us and add to the sculpture, and eventually it will break down and sow itself and become part of the prairie. So I wanted to show that real quick. And continue talking about some of these collaborations, if that's okay. And then
I just wanted to say about that one sculpture you saw one slide back. It was supposed to be a bobcat, but then it got too smashed, so she made it into a caterpillar.
Is that right? That one on the list.
Yeah. some people really tried hard to take inspiration from the photos and stuff that we took, but some people got real creative, and
I love it.
I want to see what y'all come up with.
Oh,
Come to our
it's really so much fun.
They're so
And
fun.
and actually the last this workshop we did, I anticipated mostly children, but it was all adults, and we had a really good time. So please, like, even if you don't think you're creative or whatever, come out and play in the mud with us. It's really fun. Okay, so we're gonna keep going. So I just want to mention a couple other collaborations that we've been able to pursue because of this opportunity with the residency. We consulted with Kelsey Pike to make this special paper that's mixed with plant material and native seed that's going to be part of the sculpture. And then also Danny Hurst, who we consulted to kind of get a sense of weaving with natural materials. She uses like non-native invasive wood species like bush honeysuckle, Japanese honeysuckle, and other native plants too, but she does some really beautiful work. So since our backgrounds are, you know, adjacent to weaving, but we haven't like traditionally done weaving, it was really good for us to have that insight.
I think about it as embroidery on a large scale.
Yeah, your hand is like
And that makes
tiny
it less,
needle, right?
yes, tiny needle.
But so I kind of mentioned this earlier, but what's been really cool for me as an artist with this project is being able to use different materials. So on the right, this is some smaller sculptures, works in progress that are going to be part of our exhibit at the Johnson County
Arts and
Heritage Museum. Thank you. And so that's typically I work with clay. I told you I do things you're not supposed to, like over firing. But then on the left, that is to kind of show the cedars and everything that we've been working on or working with, which is just totally different for us. So you can see some more nods to my studio practice. These are more behind the scenes things at Belger, which if you're ever in that area, feel free to go in and check out the studios there. But some other cool things that we've been doing in the meantime, yesterday, if you tuned in to KKFI, Art Speak Radio, we were on there with Maria Vasquez Boyd talking about our project. So
and that's a podcast too, so you can listen to it again. Oh, the picture on the left is us getting poison ivy. That's us actively getting
oh
poison
my
ivy.
gosh. Ugh, I have really bad
I
poison
blame
ivy.
that grape.
I do too. You know, I saw that photo today and I was like, that's exactly how I got poison ivy.
Yep.
So you know us, we're a little rambly.
Yes.
But I love this photo because not only does it show starting the process of the main cedar structures that are alternating kind of the skeleton of our structure, but in the middle you see some of that inspiration. Like I love seeing barns. I love collapsing barns. I think they're so interesting. I think they tell such a strong story about the history of the landscape of who's lived there, maybe what was there even prior to that building. So you'll see
What
lot.
are the barns? When you see a barn.
I said this one time and we always forget to mention this.
I say it all the time
Barns-
like I made it up.
I know,
You
it's so
say
funny.
it.
Barns are the gravestones of the prairie.
They really are, because
Take that in for a second. Let me say it again. Hold on. Barns are the gravestones of the prairie. So seriously though, if
I
you think
know.
about it, they really symbolize what used to be there. It's like it's a marker, right?
Right.
And it's sad, it's beautiful, it's a lot of things, because you know we can't have black and white thinking and necessarily blame people for wanting to live. But you know, we do have to understand the choices we make can have a big impact.
Yeah. And then I've always been really inspired by, you know, in the barns when this in a barn at that state, that's no longer being used how it was created.
Yeah.
Now it's being taken back over by nature. So I'm really inspired by when that happens out in the wild, and if we can get it to happen sort of with our piece too. One of the most vivid memories I have of being out, my grandpa has a farm out in Western Kansas. Family still has the land out there. We've been out there. It's gorgeous. It said yellow paintbrush on it.
Cool.
But the old farmhouse, you could climb up the creepy stairs and go up into the old bedroom, and there was a family of barn owls. They were the residents of that home, and they had been for years and years and years. So it was really fun to see that crazy old house get taken over.
Well, and it's also this idea again, that black and
back.
the black and white thinking that we're separate from nature. We're not. We're nature. Nature's us. You know, not to get all hippy dippy or whatever, but it's true. We're animals, right? And so, and
Well,
this,
clearly we built a crooked fence, so we're doing something right, aren't we? We couldn't.
we're doing great. So without further ado, let's talk a little bit about the concept too, about this sculpture. So you heard about the inspiration, the collaboration, the use of materials. So the idea with this sculpture is that we are filling each panel up with patterns that reference rattlesnake patterns on their skin, but also this idea that, okay, so it's made out of cedars and dry plant material, and then it's going to have aspects of seed clay and seed paper. And these components will eventually, it'll be all exposed to weather, right? Over several months, it'll crack, it'll crumble, it'll get rained on, the sun will really dry it out, the wind will blow it away.
Which is
pieces
why
fall
we're not
apart.
selling some of it until tomorrow after it rains tonight.
Yeah, it's gonna rain tonight. So if you kind of think of that, keep that in mind, this piece will get destroyed over time. It'll experience the passage of time, right? Which follows all of us, whether we want it to or not. But what's cool about this is, so it'll, at first you'll see this sculpture, but it'll slowly get swallowed up by the prairie as the prairie around it grows up and through it. And then all those seeds that were planted will get sown, and eventually they will rise up out of this piece as well. And all that will be left are flowers. At least that's the idea. So we're going to be doing a few things in addition to the seed clay, like actually adding plant plugs, because as you native gardeners know, seeds take a long time to germinate and to grow into like plants above the soil. So we're going to do a combination so that it has that impact that we're going for, like aesthetically and conceptually, but then also it's a long-term game for this piece. It's going to slowly sow itself into the earth and burn in the prescribed fire later this year in the winter time. So there's something
But
kind of cool
I
about that.
I know, I love that too. I wanted to just mention really quick, the section that we're working on, if you haven't been there before, if you have been there, you can see where we are. We're in front of the observation tower. But if you haven't been there before, just to be clear, our installation is on the restoration section, not on the remnant section. So the intention with our restoration, or with our project, is to add to the biodiversity of that section of the prairie. So because the more biodiverse your prairie is, the better for everyone. So
that's right. And
we have a lot of a really lovely mix of tall grass prairie forbs and other seeds
and forbs mean flowers. So which is very cool. So you can kind of see here, this is the real dirty process that we're doing right now, is casting slabs of this clay that's mixed with paper pulp, native seeds, and plant material. We're using textured plaster slabs. We're using oxides to get colors. And at the front of this sculpture is going to be, and then we'll have the paper elements too that are bright throughout. But the front of the sculpture is going to have this kind of, it's still in progress, but kind of almost, I'm leery to say altar, but I'm just thinking about like people contributing pieces and like giving gifts to the earth through this community engagement project. So it does kind of feel altar-like.
Oh, it's an altar to Mother Nature.
It's an altar to
the prairie.
The prairie, yeah. Yeah. So this is where we're at now. The next 2 days, we're hitting the ground running. We're casting slabs. We've got our paper made. We're about to head back to the prairie after this webinar and continue to add our patterns. And what we could have you all do is join us, bring your family out this Saturday. Please register in advance because there is limited registration. But we have our seed clay sculpture from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. on Saturday. And then we have our guided nature walk from 1 to 3. And it's going to be 90 degrees outside. I'm not sure why,
Bring
but
water.
Bring water and a hat. But so that's what we've got for you, kind of some sneak peeks. So you'll see the finished sculpture on Saturday. So I hope that's enough of a teaser to get you to come out there. But it's been very exciting.
But if you can't come on Saturday, it'll be finished and up by that day. So then come visit anytime after that.
Yes. All right. So I've stopped sharing my screen. So I think we're ready to now do a quick Q&A. So I'll have Chris hop back on.
What a fascinating project. The concepts are just really inspiring, very powerful. And we've got a few questions, but you really have just sort of set the stage for some really exciting things to come, a piece that just evolves with the natural world. One first question that I think is a good foundational thing to talk on, either yourselves as plant experts or Matt jump in. In general, we have a question of what exactly is the importance or the critical threats to the tallgrass prairie. And I mean, this is a very long conversation. 2 minutes. Why is
Matt,
tallgrass prairie important?
Matt,
Yeah,
jump
Matt,
in.
you
We've
got
been
this.
rambling and talking for too long. Jump in.
Hey, I'm back. So locally, one of our biggest threats to tallgrass prairie is woody invasion. So part of their project was kind of a bonus for us because they needed dogwood and we needed dogwood off of our prairies. So we were able to collaborate and remove cedar and remove dogwood, a couple of the biggest threats when we lose the fire cycle in prairies. But habitat destruction is probably the biggest threat to the prairie. Alien species invasion, and then fire suppression. So across Kansas, fire suppression is one of the biggest issues. The loss of fire on the landscape is how we're very quickly losing most of these prairies to dogwood, sumac, and Callery pear, and a lot of other things. So just a combo of woody invasion and loss of habitat.
Excellent. And again, that's the very concise version of that. A couple questions leaning more onto the artistic side of things, maybe this one perhaps to Susan or to our artist duo. A question about next week's Art KC Summit, a local arts organization with a keynote speaker that's addressing art and health and well-being. So we see a lot of things about how art intersects with community health and well-being, and then also how nature intersects with community health and well-being and personal, mental, and spiritual health, right? How would you bring these two themes together to improve human health? Or how is this project and the arts program in general, JCPRD, how is it serving that?
Yeah, I'll be happy to jump in, and then please, Cydney and Alix, you can contribute as well. But, you know, we definitely learned through the pandemic that park spaces, when we had nowhere else to go, were such an important place of refuge. Yes, physical health as people walk the trails, but I think more now than ever is the mental health component, and just what nature does to just give us a minute to breathe and step away from the very complex world we live in. I know a lot of doctors prescribe, get out in nature. I think we all know that, and all of us appreciate that, I'm sure, because of the work that you're in already, but not everybody has discovered that. And so I think, again, this idea of bringing art into the park spaces, the natural spaces that we want to protect and that we want to put resources towards doing that. I think all of that comes together in this beautiful way to draw people into those spaces that maybe don't or haven't really discovered that, and create curiosity. And again, hopefully so that they will want to care for those spaces in a new way that they didn't know before. So I think it's immensely important. Do you guys want to add anything to that?
I think you nailed it, Susan. Like that, I think that intersection there is more evident now than ever. And I know just for me personally, I feel so much better when I'm outside.
Yeah, for me personally too, as someone who openly struggles with mental health issues
Same.
and has for my whole life,
Same.
being out in nature is the only thing that really brings me true peace. And but specifically the building those connections, those stories between all the intricate little parts in the prairie, and like putting that together in my head and knowing that that's all out there and I am tiny along with it. It feels good.
Yes.
Feels good.
Does feel good.
Great responses there. That's wonderful. A couple art specific questions. One is about the clay seed balls. The seeds germinating in it as the clay degrades. Does that affect the soil makeup? And kind of a secondary circular question about that. Does the clay in the prairie soil sort of inspire you to use that medium?
That's such a good question. I'm so glad you asked that. Well, I'll let
Do
you
it.
share the one thing about it, but we, as native plant people, talk about clay a lot. And as people who deal mostly with urban native plantings, we're mostly planting into clay. And so like, it's always a struggle. And you know, this Chris, struggle to like figure out which species actually will be tolerant. And out here, the soil, I would say, I mean, maybe Matt, the soil's so nice.
It's so
nice. But tell
nice.
them what we got. What kind of clay are we using?
Okay, I'm really excited about this. Bracker's Good Earth Clay in Lawrence sells clay from Kansas, which
Native clay.
native clay. Thank you, Dina, for telling,
Yeah,
for
that's-
like, I don't know why it took me this long to realize that, because I've been in clays forever. And then anyway, I was this many years old. So it's cool. We're actually taking local clay, or, you know, Kansas native clay, and incorporating it into this
Yeah.
prairie. So it will affect the makeup of it a little bit, but we're not going to use so much that it will.
Right. And can I say that at the beginning of this project, we had envisioned using a lot more clay, and a bunch of things we were like, well, yeah, that's not, maybe we should steer away from. So like the whole project has been inspired by us thinking about like, what is the ratio to plant material, to
Right.
seed, to clay, to all of this. So a lot of the clay is just being used in a certain area.
Yeah,
And
kind of the
it's made to-
capstone.
yeah, and then it's unfired,
Mhm.
so it will break. I mean, you can speak on this a little bit.
Yeah,
But
so
it's gonna,
it'll
but
break
clay
down.
pots last forever, don't they? But if you don't fire them.
That's right. So that is kind of an interesting thing about the material of ceramics, is once it's fired to a vitreous state, it lasts forever. Like you can dig up, I mean, prehistoric
yeah.
things made of clay. So it'll fired clay outlast people. Like it will outlast us as a species. But that's what I love about this project, is none of it is fired. So though our hand is very evident in the project now, eventually it'll disappear. Same with that clay, it'll eventually break up into the soil. You know, because again, the whole prairie, that section will get burned in the next round of prescribed burns. So it will all kind of become, I don't know, mixed in eventually, but we were trying to be mindful not to alter the soil too much, because again, we're trying to help, not,
Yeah.
we're trying to, it's complicated though, because, you know, we are affecting the space. So being really mindful and making sure we're listening to the experts and to the prairie, frankly, and kind of paying attention to our surroundings and
Frank Normanley.
thank you, Frank Norman.
Thank you, Frank Norman.
Just looking for
I think
cues.
yesterday we talked about, we got to bring hoops out here to protect, because little things keep popping up around. I'm like, let's put tags on these so people know that this is a milkweed and this one's little baby, whatever. So
Yeah.
it's really it's been so fun to watch from dormancy to now at the end, how much the prairie has grown.
That has been so cool. And also just for the audience who is still with us, I know we're wrapping up, but follow us on Instagram,
Yeah.
Cydney, that's our handle. We're posting a ton of behind the scenes video. So what we couldn't include in our slideshow today, you can see more on our Instagram page, and Johnson County Parks has done a great job sharing our story too through their social media.
Yeah.
Remarkable. One last question, and then I'll close with some remarks and some announcements. CYDANDAL on Instagram.
That's correct. Thank
got
you.
it.
Great. That's posted in the chat, as well as the link to register for the event on Saturday. Both pieces of that. Last question here for you comes from what appears to be an art teacher, Laura. Curious about the color of the Flint Hills clay, especially as unfired. What's that telling you?
Terracotta. I am a sucker for terracotta. Any of my clay nerds out there, it's so beautiful over fired. It's beautiful raw. It's just qu'est-ce que c'est.
Is it, would you say it's lighter colored?
No.
Than the terracotta you get from California or wherever?
No, the other clay. So terracotta is a rich, red iron rich clay body.
But that's not from the Flint Hills. We're talking about the Kansas clay.
This is
right?
from the Flint Hills.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So the base clay is mined from Kansas, and then they add different chemicals or oxides and things to it to alter the chemistry. But this is a low fire terracotta clay with lots of grog. And
Grog?
I know, she's learned,
Frog.
there's so much to learn, to learn about ceramics. Yeah, I'm giddy. I hope you will join us, everyone.
You can
Come
learn
out.
about Grogs,
I know we've
too.
been rambling this whole hour about, there's just so many aspects. There's so many side quests we've been involved with in this project. And I just hope you can feel our excitement and our joy and appreciation for all of you and all the support we've had. Yeah.
Well, I can speak that it's quite contagious. So again, thank you all so much for the passion that you all share. Thanks to all our panelists and thanks to all our guests as well. Just a really wonderful project all around, requires so much work from so many. We have some announcements. Other things going on at Deep Roots every month. On the third Thursday, we have Native Plants at noon. This month it goes on the road. On May 18th, we're heading down virtually to Joplin area, Wildcat Glade Natural Area. And we're going to be given a tour by Jesse Ballard, MDC's naturalist there for the Wildcat Glade. And it's such a unique ecosystem. It's a chert glade. And we have the privilege of taking a trip down there to highlight some of the plants that are very unique to that specific ecosystem. It should be fascinating. And as always, Native Plants at noon. We may see Cydney and Alix in there somewhere. The Calorie Pair Buyback Program was such a success in April for our event in Lee's Summit. And if you've registered for the Lenexa Farmers Market pickup, don't forget to be there during the time 8 a.m. to 11 p.m. or excuse me, 8 a.m. to 11 a.m. And join us for our upcoming native plant sales here in the Kansas City area, benefiting the Pilgrim Center and Habitat Restoration Initiative. May 13th pickup. Go to agoodoak.com to check that out, native plants and veggies. As well as the same date, May 13th, at the Anita Gorman Discovery Center, another native plant sale sponsored by Grow Native. Be sure to get out there and get your plant material for installation here as spring is springing. Other native plant sales around the region featured on our website, deeproots.org, native plant sales tab there. Again, thanks to everybody. All of our events and webinars are on our website at deeproots.org. While you're there, if you would consider making a donation, we would be grateful. So thank you very much for joining us, and we'll see you in a few weeks on the 18th for Native Plants at noon. And always remember that what you plant matters. We'll see you soon.